Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. Well, this might be one of the last times that I end up coming here to Tilgate, or at least in some time. Because the reason that I've been coming here, just to put people up to speed in case they haven't noticed before. I mean, apart from the views and everything, but I mean, like, more specifically, this town, Crawley. The reason I've been coming here for so long, of course, is because we were actually looking after my nan. Because I won't get into details, because I think I might have mentioned something before, maybe I haven't, but also she wouldn't want that information, like the specifics, getting out there. So basically, she needed help, and normally it was my aunt who was actually here looking after her, and but every week we would well, if we were around, of course, my mum and I would drop down and be the relay, essentially. Because, like, it wasn't easy. Again, I don't want to get into details because I don't want to put more out there than I need to in this case. I know that I've told that I overshare quite a lot, and there's probably a good chunk of people who are going to say that I shouldn't really post about this in particular. But I think it's probably just more insulting to carry on and pretend like nothing has actually happened than it is to actually say even just a little. And also because it's going to be necessary to say eventually, because it's gonna come up. But yeah, so we've been doing that for about 3 years at this point. We spent most of COVID time and afterwards coming here because, as it just so happens, the restrictions over here at least were light enough that was a possibility to do. We all counted as if we were one particular bubble, and we essentially just made it work. And my mum and my aunt have been incredible over the past 3 years. They have done way more than could possibly have been asked of them. And sometimes my uncles too, depends if one of them was indisposed and so was the other one. It all just depended. You know, the family all pitched in different ways because, I mean, of course, we were going to help out in whatever way we could. I mean, even the small ways that I contributed, which is nowhere near what they were, because my dad insisted that I not get myself more involved than I already was. But yeah, you know, it was a case of everyone did something, and even if it was coming around to celebrate a particular birthday or something, who even knows? But yeah, so you can probably guess where I'm going with this already, because, I mean, people worked it out fairly quickly. But yeah, we found out yesterday that sometime in the afternoon, about 2 minutes before we actually came back and heard about this, that my nan passed away. So yeah, I was gonna mention something about that yesterday, but we were all busy going around and making sure that people would find out within the family it also just so happened to be my brother's graduation, so we were up in Liverpool, we weren't nearby. So yeah, we then ended up having to debate how to actually tell him, and there's some people who need to be called as well, whatever it might have been. And at one point I also just broke down, couldn't speak, cried for the first time in a long, I don't even know how long, like 9 years or something, I don't even know. And yeah, eventually I was just like, I will talk about this when I'm actually more coherent, when it's processed, and also when I'm not as emotional. I mean, we were all in our own ways in a wreck yesterday. Some people wore it better than others. I mean, basically everyone wore it better than I did. But like, it's one of those things that it was sudden, but also so in the end it's the way that it happened. I won't say much more than this, but the way that it happened was the best way that it could have happened if it needed to. I don't want to say there was any benefit to it, because there absolutely wasn't. But yeah, that's in her case. In her case, she was as happy as could be given the circumstances, and wasn't predicting it or dreading or whatever. Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking at the moment, just like about her, and then also about how what exactly to say, what exactly to keep private. Because I said before, I don't want to overstep or anything. I want to say just my piece, and reassure people that I am probably going to be okay. I mean, we've all been keeping each other in high spirits. I mean, just now I came from the her house, and then my aunt was there, one of my uncles, and they're there right now. Three out of the 4 kids, so to speak. And then just chattering with each other about just things, not necessarily just about her, but just about things in general, in the house not the house they grew up in the house that was acquired later. And essentially all the grandkids to some extent grew up, visiting and frequenting. Because this is one thing that I can actually say. Like, that place, it's always been, I mean, less recently, but it's always been like Grand Central Station as far as the family goes. I mean, she was like the matriarch, the very typical, like the depiction you would think of a matriarch, minus the strictness. Because yeah, apparently she was relatively strict raising children, but as far as the grandkids go in that era, and the great grandkid as well, yeah, was much more of a laissez-faire. I think she only ever got mad at me twice, ever. and that was once when I was arguing with my brother about, I don't know, something or another, and she was like, "Oh, don't argue about this. It's nothing." And of course, she was right about that. It was, I mean, clearly it wasn't important if I can't even remember what it was about, and we were like kids, so yeah, who knows. And then also a different time when I was when I was actually when I was playing outside, and I happened to find this like metal cover, and I decided to throw it in the air for some reason, and I think it might have actually hit her or something. I think someone either almost got hit or got hit. And yeah, anyone would get mad at those situations, but other than that, she was amazing with me, even when I very much didn't deserve it. And I'm not just talking about recently, you know, where for some reason, you know, I just got away with pretty much anything while the vitriol from whatever medication or anything went to everyone else. You know, it was always the grandkids, and particularly me, because I was so nearby like most of the time. Like whatever I actually did, or whenever I was around, I got very, very like biased in my favor treatment from her. But not even that. I mean like way back in the day. Because I was a horrible child for some of the time. So yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason, you know how some, you know, but this is something that I guess if there's any parents out there who are watching, then can relate to this. You know, the kids are always going to go through some sort of rebellious phase. Usually that happens like, you know, early to late teens or something. They always blame puberty for that kind of thing. I ended up going through that at 6, 5 maybe, where I just decided, okay, here's how I'm going to behave. Like for no particular reason. I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna be mean to certain people. I'm gonna break rules. I'm gonna, I don't know, do whatever, and I'm just gonna, you know, make people mad. And yeah, I still, like, I remember some of the things I did, and I can't for the life of me remember why. And like one of those things which pertains to me, so it's not really something that is like, it's not really something that's like gonna overshare for the family or anything. It's this is very much I did this. One of the things that I used to do for, again, literally no reason was I decided, oh, you know, most of my family are my friends or something, and then, but not her, because I didn't like the look of her face. That was my reasoning at the time. Like, and like there was nothing wrong with her face, like at all. I have no, again, what was I even basing that on? I have no idea, but again, I actually showed like the same bias, you know. My aunt was like, oh yes, you know, she can do no wrong, she's my friend or something, but Nan, or Nanny as she was then, isn't, and whatever. And then every possible chance I could get to form a contrast between them, I did, and that was like for at least a couple of years. She never held that against me. Like, not even once did it cross her mind to be like, you know, to retort back or to again, like I said, even be angry. She was angry at me twice for things that anyone would be, and then, but also for that stuff, which I'm very sure, like, hurt her to a very core. Never let that show even once. And I didn't know this at the time, but she had plenty of practice doing that just across her life, from very different situations, in very different times, like, you know, even before or after the war and everything. Like, she went through all of that. I didn't even know that at the time. I didn't even know that there was a war. I was like 5 or 6. Hadn't covered that part yet in history or whatever. I don't think I was even taking history. Actually, no, I was. Whatever. I'm rambling. But yeah, she like, not even once did that show. Like, there's some people who, this is a very common thing, that, you know, people will hold their trauma against you, or they'll try to either weaponize it, or they will have it skewer their worldview and like portray that to anyone else. And that's not an age specific thing. I mean, the more that it happens to you, the more likely you are to end up just giving up on your, like, ideals or your positivity or anything. And somehow that just never happened. Like, at all. Like, she was more of a role model than we actually, like, give her credit for. And it was partly me who pushed her to that. And you know, when I eventually ended up like plucking up the courage finally to actually apologize for that and bring it up again, I didn't like thinking about it, but like, it was 2020. It was when I apologized to her through a window when we actually went round to check on her before we started, you know, being the relay. And we just, like, had to observe from outside and just talk to her for mere seconds at a time, doing a supply run or something. Like, that was it. And then so I finally, like, somehow managed to segue the conversation into that, and I finally apologized for that, and she looked at me and was like, what are you talking about? She didn't even remember. Like, of course, how could she possibly resent me if she doesn't even remember that it happened? I mean, you know, usually I wouldn't remember either, because that's the age when people tend to latch onto some things. But, you know, I mean, you know me, you've watched my content for some time, you know, or again, if you're family, then you've known me growing up, that I tend to, my memory is quite prodigious at times, and is never selective. So something can either just go out the door immediately, or it can stay there indefinitely. And that's one of those things where I was like, my goodness, that's what was I even thinking? And yeah, that just built up for such a long time, and then I finally apologized. She was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, wow. Just wow, that's all I can really say there. And then she forgave me anyway, because obviously it didn't end up mattering in the end. And at that point, I'd known that I knew about the other stuff that was going on, and like how, like, for most of it, there was never like any sense of closure. So at least I was able to wrap that up, so to speak. Like, I've been told, you know, don't have any regrets about my time with her or anything, but yeah, that's one of the ones where it's like, you know, I do, and I've carried that with me the whole time. And that's not me saying like that was the reason why I was always there when she needed me, or like was to her best and was always so nice to her and she was nice to me. Like, no, that had nothing to do with it. By that point, I'd already apologized and she'd already wrapped it up. It wasn't like an issue of me like atoning for a guilty conscience or anything. It was just that, I mean, even after that happened, those things, like in the subsequent years when we actually moved to Spain and everything, and then whenever we came back and visited and all that other stuff, like, I mean, she was always really happy to see us, we were happy to see her, and then we just eventually ended up just mending that over time and like really properly bonding on in both ways. When I actually finally like grew up and started to actually appreciate her for who she was. And then even then, I still tormented her in different ways, I will say. It was different things, but it wasn't like malicious. It was just me trying to get her involved in the stuff that I enjoyed. And that was for example, when I tried to show her how to count in Spanish, that was one of the things that she actually kept on defaulting to French and sometimes would shuffle off to German or anything. One particular holiday that we were on, she actually got to her record of 12, which was amazing, considering, like, again, she's got several different languages there. She had Gaelic in there as well, I think, and trying to piece that together, like, it was quite something. I believed in her the whole way, and then and she indulged that. But that wasn't even the most of it. It was also I was really into Pokemon cards, and so was my brother, and so I decided I'd like to challenge people to Pokemon cards all the time. And then she was one of the ones who would always actually play, despite the fact that she eventually banned the word Pokemon except on Sundays, and we called it Nomicop from then onwards, which, you know, Pokemon backwards. And it was she actually would try her best. And then, even though I explained the rules like a few times to her, it's not like she ever like adopted a strategy or anything. She just kind of like kept, you know, just reading out the attacks or something, or asking me, oh, what does this card do? It's like, oh, that's an energy, you can put this down to do blah blah blah. And like, I never actually helped her win because I was still trying to compete, so I won every time except one. She did actually legitimately beat me at one point. I was the one who knew, so I was like, okay, this, that, you win. No one was like, this, that, I win. And yeah, she was really happy, and then people actually really congratulated her and everything. I'm a very honest person in terms of whenever whether it's like a competition. Like, I get competitive, of course, but if someone wins fair and square, they win fair and square. I think some people at university knew that when I would constantly, even if the referee in a particular drama game didn't actually know that I was eliminated, I would just sit down anyway because I had made a mistake, and was like, but I didn't see that. It's like, oh, yeah, but I knew. I think by now it's obvious that I don't like to have things on my conscience, even though, again, there's still some things that I said, like, you know, my nan's amazing pancakes that she would make a lot of the time, especially whenever we asked her to, and ones that she would make for her kids as well. And at one point we were talking about like how we'd won a karate tournament or something, and then this must have been before the whole like not my friend phase, because that karate tournament was when I was 5, and then before that, the first memories I had of her were actually of like me showing off that I knew my numbers in English, fittingly enough, and just kind of the buttons on her cardigan, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then she went 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like that. And yeah, so before that, and I said, oh, you know, you deserve a gold medal for these pancakes or something. And she said at one point that she'd never actually won a gold medal ever. And just before I knew that, like, gold medals basically just like print them off and then you can assign for a lot of things, but it still means a lot. And I thought, okay, we're going to do this at some point where we're going to arrange like some competition, and then she'll win a gold medal for that. It was more of a case of, it wasn't like trying to fix it for her, because again, I never actually went for that kind of thing. It was more like I was going, okay, well, this is something that you're good at and you will beat anyone who dares oppose you. So we'll do that. And then of course I didn't know how to make a gold medal. And then by the time that I realized, oh yeah, you could actually just print those off, like the idea had subsided and I never actually got to do that. That's another regret that I have, is not giving her that gold medal that I promised. The other promise I made to her was just, when I still want to be an astronaut when I grew up, and then that was, oh, I will go up there and take pictures of space for you, because at one point I said to both my nan and my aunts that, why couldn't they could go to space or something if they wanted to, and I said, oh, we're too old. It's like, okay, well, when I grow up I'll do that and I'll take some pictures for you and bring them down. Like, that was ludicrous. And I know that nowadays, nowadays Elon Musk has got his crew for Mars and everything, but yeah, that wasn't even like a thought at the time. But yeah, so like that one, no, but the gold medal, it's like, gosh, again, really should have done that. It sounds ridiculous that I thought, oh yeah, I have all the time in the world, especially because of how frail she ended up, but yeah, like, she'd been through so much, like, emotionally and even health-wise, for like way more years than just those last 3, that it just felt like, nothing could topple her. Like, whatever she was going through, she would come out of it the best way that she possibly could. At one point, after some sort of hospital visit for a thing I won't specify, like, she came out and she was not in a good shape, and then started attending physiotherapy, and then whenever we visited her next time, she was showing off like what she could actually, like, how stable her arms were, and how she would be able to stand up and sit down from a chair like really quickly. And I was going to say, even at one point I think she mentioned a sit-up or something. Of course, at that point, my still very young and desperate to prove himself brother decided, oh, well, that's nothing, let me show you what I can do. Which I guess might have motivated a bit more. Another story that I have is the famous diving board experience, which I might have told on this channel already at some point, but here it is again, just in case. When, again, before the Not My Friend stuff, I'm pretty sure, was for my aunt's 50th birthday, so I won't specify the year because of that, but needless to say, like, we were all very young, and they were there visiting us in the US, and at one point, there was, we used to go to this local pool all the time, and we decided to, I'll let these two go past, and we decided that we would take everyone else down there. And that pool had a particular diving board, which was a pretty high diving board if you are a child, and also if you are a 75-year-old woman. So you might have guessed where this story is going, but at some point, my then 4-year-old brother, I think, decides, okay, I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna jump off the diving board, as one does. And that was all fine, everything. And then eventually, he ends up swimming past. I'm there I was there too, like with my nan, and we were just like opposite each other, just floating in one of the lanes or whatever, not really moving. We just observed him and waited for him to come back. And he goes past and goes, "Only boys can do that, Nan." Now, I get a lot of my personality from her, I think. Like, even just stuff like, we even said this yesterday, actually, before we found out, like the fact that I am an eater and a drinker, which means that I like to have something solid at the same time as having something liquid. I don't like to either just have food or just have a drink. Water's the exception. Water, whatever. But most of the time I'm like, if I eat something, my throat will get dry, or if I drink something, my stomach won't get full, or whatever it might be. I just we have nothing to soak it up. Stuff like that. And when that happens, that was the same thing that she used to say, although in her case it might have been an excuse to have a slice of cake with tea, but which, incidentally, we also just did. Because we also had a couple of family birthdays. Again, I won't say who. We had a couple of family birthdays yesterday, and so there was still birthday cake. So I took some of that round as well. And but yeah, so basically, like I was saying, one of the things that I get from her, other than that very famous example, was probably my disdain for anything remotely connected to gender inequality. So, like the true feminist that she was, she marched up. Well, I don't know if she marched up. She more like mildly paced, like briskly walked or something over to the board, gets up there, and at this point, like, the family, they all start like pointing out that she's about to go, they're about to jump, and like, I think my mum thought that the lifeguard was going to like step in or something and say like, no way, absolutely not. Although I guess in those situations they have a height limit, but they don't have an upper age limit. So nothing that could be done there. And so she just decides, okay, here we go, and then jumps off and then flops down. And that's one thing that she does remember, because in her words, she thought she was never going to get back up again, or come back up again, rather, because she just sunk down, didn't realize. But yeah, as often happens, people do tend to float in pools to a certain extent. So eventually she was well, not eventually, it was like very quickly, but it felt like eventually she was able to emerge. And here was a shot of water for no reason, other than the fact that I came a different route this time. So, and then afterwards, just for like the icing on the cake there, she goes back. My brother and I are waiting in the same place as before, and then he just goes, "That wasn't very good." So there you go. And the fight for gender equality marched on after that point. But yeah, like it is utterly bizarre. And the fact, and also it's worth pointing out, she hated water. Like sometimes when we were at the beach, like one time I think when we were on holiday, also in the US, she actually went in. But other than that, she was not a swimmer per se. Although I think during the war she actually used to go on holiday to this particular beach or something on the island of Butte. I asked her about that because I had to ask my oldest relative how they used to spend their holidays. So I gave her a call, and she actually, of course, delighted as ever to tell a story, another thing I get from her, decided, there you go. If I end up making it to old age and I'm still doing walking Wednesdays, they're going to get like hours long or something. I'll just forget that I've started out on a particular point, and I'll just keep going back to it. I repeat myself enough in these already. Who knows, I might even tell the same story twice, like I did with that diving board one. But yeah, like, all of this is to say that, she was incredible, and a role model in ways that she didn't even know that she was. And then also just like amazingly strong, like emotionally and even physically, depends on like how you apply that relatively, physiotherapy or whatever aside. And like a real character as well. Like, I've even told like most of the stuff that will like really be like, there's like, I told like one-off events and such, but as far as her general character goes, you know, she was always jesting, sometimes to detrimental effect. You know, allow people to really make fun of her in family banter a lot of the time. And like, she would find it funny as well. Well, those things where, again, I learned from her, you gotta laugh at yourself a lot. And so I do. Like, it's strange to say, like, again, you know, for all of most of our lives, she was there. And like, it's still, like, it did sink in yesterday that had been like all of a sudden wrenched from us, even if she wasn't quite the same in the end. She was still her. Like, there were still moments, especially whenever she saw us and everything. Like, I feel like it ate her up inside a lot, so that she wasn't able to do as much for us at the towards the end because of her situation. And so whatever she could do, whether it was, I don't know, like, just remind us like how loved we were, whatever it may have been, then she would. Which I guess is sort of like how I felt as well. Like, I mean, you know, I've been told, you know, that I made a big difference and everything, like, just by being there, whatever it is that I did. Most of the time, I was just there for moral support, quite honestly. I mean, again, I wasn't allowed full access to most of the stuff that went on. I did help out with a few things, but mainly she wanted me to be separate and doing my own thing and just, you know, watching me or whatever. Like, who knows what it might have been, or just very occasionally like piping up and telling me a random story or some random question or anecdote or whatever it may have been. Like, I'm sure that did make a difference. I'm just saying that I didn't do the most, but I was glad to do something. And I think, yeah, again, that does seem to be that she was somewhat in the same boat in that regard. So yeah, who knows? The real Grandma Butter is way more of a character than whatever random creation I came up with in 5 years later that one time. Absolutely. So I just thought there was someone coming. So yeah, it feels very strange that, you know, that constant presence, that constant source of joy that we had for, again, all of pretty much everyone's lives, like that matriarch, you know, the superior being, as she called herself one time. We never let her forget about that. You know, the same person who would just indulge in either in the Spanish, which, by the way, I was talking about Pokemon cards before. Sorry, I didn't finish what I was saying about that. Like, the one thing else that I didn't mention about that is that some of the Pokemon cards we had were in Spanish, because that's where we got into them. So I would bring them along. Some of them we got while we were visiting around here, but most of them were in Spanish. So she was there, you know, with not that good eyesight, trying to read words that she'd never come across before. At one point, my brother made her sing in Spanish, just trying to sing instructions on a Gormiti case or something, which is how I found out there's actually a game you can play with Gormiti, supposedly, and that's why they have numbers on their feet. But yeah, like, there was that, and also, like, she was really happy to like learn like minor bits and stuff. Like, I wrote her a letter in Spanish one time, because we had to write to someone for like, oh yeah, I think it was for Grandparents' Day actually, but of course my grandparents don't speak Spanish, or didn't speak Spanish, and so I had to write mine in Spanish, and I said at the end, sorry, I can't write this in English because it was a Spanish class, and in my primary school, you spoke Spanish in your Spanish lessons and English in your English lessons. That was, and you got punished if you did it any other way, or at least told off. So yeah, I was like, I'm sorry, I can't translate this. Can you do it? And then I said, Westy's name, actually. If you know who Westy is. Yeah, can you do it, Westy? Because he was studying Spanish at the time, so I thought, okay, he'll do it. And now it turns out that his dad, I just found out today, is also doing Spanish podcasts and stuff, and his brother, in fact, studied Spanish at university. And now actually teaches it. So yeah, funny how that worked out. But yeah, at the time, that was him, and and even if you didn't get what was said on there, I wrote something to her. She framed it on the fireplace, and it is still there. I think I sent like a flower over or something. Like we did end up posting it internationally, and the flower just was taped on there. It like dried out years ago. That's still on there. Like, that's how much she preserved. She has like photos of basically everyone repeated ad nauseum over like the entirety of her living room. So yeah, we all meant a great deal to her. And sometimes she'd even ask me to give us some photos or something, and then tell a bit of a story about them, even if I happen to feature in one of those photos and remember the story. You know how it goes. And then last thing I swear. Another thing that I remember is that, again, she indulged in Spanish to some extent, like apart from that letter, and she even one point when we actually did we used to do family Easter egg hunts. Actually, nowadays I am the Easter egg hunt creator. So yeah, for my cousin once removed, I actually lay out some clues, which apparently end up being so difficult because I do a couple of rhyming couplets, or quatrains, I guess there would be, and you're supposed to figure those out, and apparently they're so difficult that the parents actually had to step in. So my cousin himself actually ends up doing most of those, but before that it was a case that someone would lay this out for me. That's why I got the idea. For me and Carl, we just end up going to different places, which sometimes were just, the clues that were on there were more like, go to this place for the next clue, and then, clue. You didn't have to solve anything. One time I think there was some that we had to search around. At one point, we just had the last one on there was the word Abuela, which of course was meant to be Abuela, but was spelt wrong. And so, because we taught her that's how you said grandmother in Spanish, so, she was Abuela. And yeah, then we rushed back, and as it turns out, the Easter eggs were in her hands the whole time, miraculously unmelted. So yeah, which to be fair, we might have felt mildly cheated in the moment, because for crying out loud, you had them the whole time. It's like if somebody was just, on a treasure hunt, and you find out at the end of the movie or something that they just had it in their pockets. Like, oh, you mean this treasure? Oh, this thing. Yeah, I had this with me the whole time. But yeah. Now what I remember is the fact that she took the time to try and write Abuela without actually consulting for the spelling. Just by herself, just to show that she engaged and that she cared. And yeah, she cared about all of us and loved all of us, and we loved her. That's simple as, really. I can spend 45 minutes or so talking about that, but that's really all there is to it. And yeah, we all really, really do miss her. Really miss her. I know I seem like I'm doing okay now, but who knows if that will last or whatever. All we're going to do is, stick together as a family, keep making each other happy, the way that she did. So that's what we're going to do. So thanks for listening to that. I know this was a very personal Walking Wednesday, but I wanted to say something. I can't not say anything. It's just not in my nature, And for crying out loud, you know, another cousin of mine talked about my brother and I on TV one time. Who knows? But yeah, so thanks for indulging again. Please leave a like or dislike as your opinion matters for everyone's already and all that stuff. And on that note, until next time, farewell.
So this time I said I wasn't going to bring any electronics, so I was going to bring an apple. And so I actually did bring literally a half-eaten apple, as in the fruit. So yep, that's what happened.
And then did Carl say what he got?
Yes.
In the church?
Yes, he did say some of the things that he got, didn't you, Carl?
Carl? In the church on Christmas Day? What happened? What did you say?